question for Professor Naqvi, please. Professor Naqvi, I don't know if you've had time to study the no economic program announced by President Nazarbayev this week. You talked about fiscal stimulus program. Can you give an assessment of the program he announced? Is this going to be enough?
Unfortunately, I have not. I've been busy with this talk that I had to prepare, so I am at a loss as to what he has proposed. I look forward to reading it in future. I will therefore not be in a position to comment on the plans that he has announced. But perhaps there are others who are familiar with it and they could respond. Well, what has he proposed?
He's proposed taking $9 billion from the National Fund over 3 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, $3 billion per year, but without too many specifics on what it would be spent on, infrastructure and so on.
Off the cuff, my reaction would be that 14.2 billion is the magnitude of the adverse GDP shock as a consequence of the current drop in the price of oil from $102 a barrel down to $77 a barrel today. So 6.13% negative shock translates into $14.2 billion annually. So it would appear to me that if it's 9 billion spread over 3 years, then that is a significantly smaller amount than the amount required to fully neutralize the adverse shock.
Thank you.
On a best basis of pure calculation.
Okay, Adi.
Yes, Oldras. Maybe I missed something, but as far as I understood from your presentation, the decrease in imports from Russia to Kazakhstan started happening before this year, right? So at the same time, we have been in the customs union. Now we are entering the new economic level of economic integration. So what is the reason? First question: what was the reason for this decrease in imports? And the second is, well, in your part about Kazakhstan-Russia relations, the Russian factor that is influencing Kazakhstan economics, you didn't mention this, the integration projects and, well, possibly political implications, not only economic implications for the economy.
After entering to customs union, the negative saldo with Russia grew every year. It started from 6 billion in 2010 and reached to 12.7 billion in 2013. And but this year the trend changed. Now we see the decrease. In the first months, January, February, March, I thought that it is a local trend, and later the growth of import from Russia will continue. But this trend continues every month, and the last month we see the data is August. August also shows that import from Russia is falling. And if we see the components of the import, we can state that all the components of import are falling. And I think that this is due to recession in Russia that is already started. Of course, officials say that there is no recession and there is economic growth at least 1% or 0.5%. But I think in reality there is recession, and this is the main explanation why import from Russia is falling.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Actually, if you can introduce yourself, sorry.
My name is Kasimkhan Kaparov. I'm head of National Bureau for Economic Research. Thank you very much for your interesting presentations. I have several points just to point it. One of the reasons for decreasing imports from Russia, as we see it this year, and as Oljas mentioned, the last months we observed it is August. So we could probably also count something for devaluation that was in February of the tenge and its possible effect on this. So, and as we know that ruble has already played it out, this decrease of 20%. So as for me personally, I'm not buying that the imports from Russia will decrease over the short-term, mid-term period. Another argument about stagnation in Russia and the cause of the main cause, corruption. Of course, corruption undermines the economic policy and the efficiency, but we saw that Russia was growing quite fast over the last decade with the corruption, and so as for my viewpoint, I see that the capacity utilization rate in Russia has reached its maximum, so it's actually has no room for further growth, and the main reason I see is that there is a lack of investment in Russia into new capacity, and probably this geopolitical crisis and country risk and expected elections in 2016 are somehow contributing to this uncertainty for investors within the Russia and the foreign investors. And the question I have for Oljas regarding the policy of National Bank. So we see that National Bank has limited tools to address the issue of devaluing tenge. And my question is, what tools left and how long can National Bank be using it? With we know that interest rate is not a tool that is working in Kazakhstan. We know that increasing the deposits of commercial banks with the National Bank is a tool that National Bank has already been using. And of course, there will be additional 3 billion injections from National Fund, and I think that there will be also further Eurobond placement by the government over the next years, and there is some proceedings from legalizations that are expected next year. Probably there will be also bilateral loans from China or other willing partners to provide loans for Kazakhstan. But anyway, I see that as Professor Naqvi mentioned, the figure 12 and 14 billion annually is quite high for Kazakhstan, accounts for about 5 to 8% of GDP, and
6.13%.
Yes, so thank you. And I think that that's the main challenge for the policymakers, how to beat this number with the limited resources we have, and not to overuse the national fund and not to lose it in the next 3-5 years. Thank you.
Okay, that was excellent. Do you want to respond to these challenges?
There are many tools to face the problem of devaluations, but I can tell only about part of these tools, because the next part is now discussed in National Bank, and I have the restriction to say about it. So I can say only about the tools that can that already discussed in the market. The first tool is to increase minimal reserve requirements for currency, for obligations of bank denominated in currency, in foreign currency. And the second tool is the change of deposit guaranteeing scheme. For example, now we have guarantee for all deposits with an amount less than 5 million. And now the scheme can be changed in a way that for tenge deposits, the guarantee amount can increase. And for foreign currency deposits, the amount will be left, guaranteed amount will be left. And also, there is recommended rate on deposits for foreign currency deposits and tenge deposits. For tenge deposit is about 10%. For foreign currency deposits, about 4%. And this recommended rate for foreign currency deposit can be decreased to 3.5 or 3%. And this is, but this is but if necessary, National Bank can apply another tools, but I cannot tell about these tools now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I think we're already privileged to get all the. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, Alex.
Thank you. I have two questions on on sanctions in Russia and how they affect what the effect is, because I'll just mention that technically Russia would be able to replace 2/3 of their imports, which I think is if I understood correctly, which is a huge number, and I would be interested to hear more how it can be done, because I'm curious whether the Russian counter sanctions, or whatever you can call them, because it's not entirely clear whether it were the sanctions to hurt the Europeans or the sanctions to discipline and to restructure the domestic economy, in the first place the agricultural sector. The thing is that if we assume that the measures of banning certain foodstuffs from being imported to Russia is supposed to be the first step of replacing the imports, curbing the domestic economy, maybe making new ties with Latin America, but also with the countries of the customs union, which would be somehow natural. Kyrgyzstan, there were a lot of talks that now Kyrgyzstan could shift its imports to Russia to replace the Polish and the German and whatever. If it is the first step, then more steps should come in the domestic economic policy towards agriculture, especially if it is the first thing. And please correct me, but as for now, I don't see any further coordination. And plus, restructuring and disciplining the domestic agricultural economic sector implies that you have a midterm strategy at least, because pastures and plantations and farms, it's not a factory. You just can't say, well, let's do 200% capacity next year. It takes time, and it takes 3 to 5 years time to be able to build up that capacity. So my question is whether you can recognize anything which would support the assumption that it is really not about a short-term reaction and political pain to the Europeans, and what would support the claim that the sanctions are actually turned inside and are supposed to replace the imports, as you pointed out, which can be done to an extensive amount.
For example, if we take Russian import, it's annual volume $350 billion. Out of this, 150 is consumer goods, 100 is intermediate goods, and the 100 billion is technology, equipment, and so on. And of course, Russia now is able to replace consumer goods and intermediate goods, and it cannot be done in a short period of time. It will, they can do it gradually within 3-5 years. And for example, now within the nearest year, they can replace at least 50 billion. If we see the capacity level of production companies, now they about 65-70%. So they can increase production without constructing new plants. But after that, they should construct new plants. So for the first year, the possible amount of replacing is 50 billion. And I think each year they can replace by 15 billion, so within 4 years they can replace all the money. But only in case if state management will not be corrupted.
If I could interject,
Yeah.
Sure.
my impression is that the Russian retaliation is only for a 12-month period.
Yeah.
It's just a 12-month ban on imports of agricultural products, apples from Poland. Now, that requires the Poles to eat more apples per day. But it's not clear that suddenly a whole bunch of apple trees will spring up in Russia. Moreover, there is nothing on the card that the 13-month comes and the sanctions will remain in place. So my impression is that this is a purely political retaliation against European Union, and there are already some sounds, noises being made in Germany to have a plan in place for what would happen when the sanctions will be removed, provided Russia alters its behavior in eastern Ukraine. So it's not clear to me that the Russian economy is embarking on an import substitution program at all. It is not even clear that would be a wise thing to do.
Okay, can I comment on that?
Please.
Well, I'm just taking President Putin by his word. Because this was the announcement after the imports. I mean, I'm very happy because Germany is right now covered with Polish apples, which
Sure.
are completely so cheap you couldn't imagine. Absolutely, it's something unimaginable. But the official statement is that we are going to embark on an import replacement strategy with our partners from the customs union and the Eurasian Economic
It's
Union.
not clear that Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan produces apples,
But it's not only apples. It's not only apples. It's
or indeed other manufactured goods.
and this is my interest in this. So this would suppose that there's some kind of a new labor division in the Eurasian Economic Union coming, saying, well, let us split the tasks and step by step replace the Western imports. But I personally don't see much of that happening right now. So.
Okay, you wanted to comment on that?
I just wanted to share with the audience the official quote from the governor of National Bank that was published in Financial Times on this Tuesday. So Mr. Kilmbetov said it will be $80 per barrel for oil and 38 to 42 rubles per dollar. Then it's quite okay for us. If not, I think we will move faster to inflation targeting. So that's the official numbers that.
It's already 77 today. It's not 80.
And the ruble isn't 38.
Yeah.
Okay, it was only on
More like 46.
49, 47.
49, 48,
46.
47, 48.
So an accommodating monetary policy is in order.
Okay, if I can ask as well. Ozhas, you mentioned a very interesting figure of the money, the capital that Russian companies keep outside. Is there a number for Kazakhstani Kazakhstani companies or Kazakh companies, how much money they keep outside? And another question is, you made very interesting prescriptions for Russian economy, but do you have prescriptions for Kazakhstani economy? And I'm particularly interested in the issue of trade regimes, you know, where should be the orientation, because, well, you discussed Russia, you discussed China. With one, we have, Eurasian Economic Union that will start functioning in January. With another, we have this, you know, really flourishing economic cooperation, if you can. And there is also European Union, of course, European countries. We're joining WTO, it seems. So many things are happening. If you have, you know, certain prescriptions, that would be great.
As for the estimates of how much money we have outside, there is a range of estimates: 100 billion, 150 billion, and between 150 and 250. So I think my own estimate that the real number is close to upper
Okay.
figure. And as for the relations of Kazakhstan with other countries, if we enter WTO, the main assumption is that the rate of custom duties will decrease to the level that was before customs union. So this will arise the question for what we entered customs union, because one of the main arguments when entering customs union was that we will increase the rate of duties and the no profit from that. But now the rate after WTO, the rate will decrease, and this argument will be eliminated. And but I think that entering to WTO will not change the situation rapidly. Most of the parameters will enter into power after 6-7 years, because there will be kind of transitional period. And I think the most changes will be in financial sector, because foreign banks can open branches without any license of national bank. But I don't know. Each year Kazakhstan states that probably until the end of the year will enter to WTO, but each year it is postponed. Another subject, Kazakhstan have potential to grow despite of the crisis. Even the crisis will take place outside of all regions, because many parameters are very low, and if we will work on that, and this will adapt to economic growth. And for example, just to say, just to compare, for example, if we evaluate the strengths of foreign negative factors, for example, minus 50, so the strength of local internal possibility to grow is plus 150. So we can grow in a way that we can eliminate any negative factor. But to have this, we need to also to increase state management quality. We have the same problem in Russia.
Okay, the coffee break is not here, so let's extend a little bit the Q&A time. Okay, yes.
Hello, my name is Nicolas de Pedro. I'm coming from Barcelona. I have a question for both the speakers. 1 week ago, we had a seminar in Madrid in which this, I think, well-known Russian economist and member of the liberal opposition, Vladislav Innosontsev, participated. And he made a very strong statement. He simply said, well, he made several strong statements, but one of them was that he thinks that Putin has mentally disengaged from the real economy, so he doesn't care so much about it. So his main concerns are now political, geopolitical, etc. So my question for both of you is, would you agree with that statement? And if so, what would be the consequences or evident consequences or implications for Kazakhstan? Thank you.
I don't know. I'm economist, not politician.
It's a very political answer.
I obviously have no idea what is going on in a man's mind, but it would appear to me to be most peculiar if the head of state of one of the top 10 economies in the world by GDP loses his head and decides that he shall not engage with the real economy at all. It would spell complete disaster. There is nothing that I have seen in terms of actual actions that would indicate a disengagement with the real economy. In fact, if anything, it was not long ago that Vladimir Putin signed an accord with China for a very large energy deal. He's a regular participant in the BRICS meetings, and nothing in terms of actual actions would seem to indicate that.
But I guess here the question can arise, is this deal with China, primarily an economic deal or a political deal? And whether, it's politics first, economy second, unlike in Kazakhstan, of course.
The old name of economics was political economy. So, and Karl Marx in particular always believed in the primacy of economic forces even in determining social and political behavior and political outcomes. So clearly there are political overtones to it, but it cannot be denied that 400 billion is 400 billion, and that's a very large sum of money as the size of the contract. Of course there is neutralization in terms of if there are any sanctions or curtailment of imports of energy in Western Europe, then China is a big customer and a growing economy, second largest in the world, and it's a counterbalance, it's also part of the BRICS group. So yes, there are political overtones, but given the size of the contract, one cannot get away from the very, very beneficial economic value, both to China and to Russia.
Well, there are different opinions, I guess, on the matter. Okay, we can take one more and then... Okay,
No,
so
if
for
there are
the rest.
questions, then privilege the
Yeah.
questions.
No, it seems...
But just a very short comment, because we are not sure that it was really a contract. Most of our, I don't know, most of sources who are knowledgeable about the deal say it's more of a MOU again, and this of course implies that it was in a highly political time. The signal was we have other alternatives to Europe, and then again the 400 billion, it's not real money in terms of a direct input into Russian budget, considering the infrastructure investments over 10-15 years. So the price of gas, the price is still unknown for us, and all these details, because there is information about second deal maybe coming, whatever. So I don't know. I'm very curious about why you're so optimistic about that.
There are two distinct issues here, not entirely unrelated. The first is that it's a very American or a Western European concept that whenever a deal is struck between two nation states, all the details must be laid bare. There is no such notion in Asia. And China is as Asian as you can get. So why would China display before the entire world the details of any contract, number one. Number two, we are aware that Gerhard Schroeder oversaw the development of the North Sea pipeline, and that Germany is amply supplied by Gazprom with natural gas. Why would one be surprised that a similar venture would begin and come to fruition between Russia and China?